Welcome to a very special edition of Global Conversations. And we are doing this in conjunction with the International Association of the Friends of Crimea. My guest tonight is somebody who is very important to Crimea and the Russian Federation, Mr. Georgy Muradov. Mr. Muradov, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you a number of questions. First of all, what is the root cause of the events that are now unfolding in the heart of Europe? And why has Ukraine become the cruelest clash, as you said, in world civilizations?
Look, if we speak generally, in a big scale, there is a fight for natural resources. I feel it like this. You know that our country is very big. It has more than 35% of natural resources of the world. Energy resources, mineral resources, metals, and water, everything. It's a kind of a stock for Europe, at least. Of course, Europe was buying these stocks. We had friendly relations. Everything was normal. But from sometimes maybe somebody thought that it's better to have it free of charge. And we were feeling all this last 30 years, at least myself, because I was working as a diplomat for 40 years and more, that it was not sincere, the words that we are friends, everything will be good, only because of one reason: the expansion of NATO, the expansion of military forces, new and new countries which were our allies historically, became members of NATO, and American weapons, strategic weapons, nuclear weapons were put on different territories, some of them the territories of these new countries. We were feeling that it was not sincere on the part of United States and Western countries, because we just simple people thinking why they are doing all this, what do they want. I said from the beginning, it's our national resources is the aim. Now we feel that this matter creates a lot of problems to at least European countries. Maybe not so much to the United States, but for European countries, yes. And they feel that bad relation, even rivalry with Russia, makes a big harm, brings many problems to development of Europe, to normal life of people, because to some extent I should say that they are closing the door to their own stock. It's a very strange position. That's why my understanding and my impression is that they are, I should say, in colonial dependence from the United States now. You remember that some years ago, maybe 8 years ago, Obama, President of the United States, said that we pressed Europe to put sanctions against Russia. So it was American initiative. And Europe followed this initiative and brought itself with more and more sanctions to this situation when they have energy crisis, I think world will have food crisis because of different actions against Russia. We cannot bring and sell our products which are needed for many countries of the world, especially underdeveloped countries. It, in fact, it makes chaotic the situation in the world and leads to aggravation of tension, maybe with the threat of big war, in the world war. We see that now in Ukraine, the fight is not with the Ukrainians. I don't see already Ukrainians there. Mostly it is Western and, first of all, American military forces, American weapons, heavy weaponry, and dozens of thousands of foreign troops there. Yes, we see it.
American also.
Americans also.
Yeah.
Americans are leading in the military staff working in Ukraine. But at the field, there are not so many Americans, mostly from the other countries. But we know that there are many of them. And of course, Western countries are not taking into consideration that we will not leave the heart of our nation, because Malorossi means small Russia. Kiev is the motherland of Russian cities, historically and always. New Russia are these territories which now came back to the Russian Federation. And we will not give the opportunity to Western countries to put in our heart the weapons to put this country, which is called now, still called Ukraine, to the military scale of NATO, and to the values of nowadays Western world. Because in Russia, nobody can agree with these values of LGBT communities, not families, and everything which is wrong. I don't know where wrong, maybe in minds, maybe it is some politics which is elaborated somewhere to reduce the population in the world. But it is not our politics, and we will not accept it as something good for the world. That's why this transgender world, I should say, of the West, we will not give there our sister or a part of our nation as we see Ukraine, as we feel it. And I don't think that Ukrainian people agrees to go there. Nobody make any referendum or polls or anything else. The leadership of this country is purely bought by capital with American currency, maybe. I don't know exactly with which currency, but for sure it's not, their politics is not corresponds to the wishes and to the development of Ukraine itself. My understanding is very simple. If this way, this path will be continued, it will lead first to crisis in our relations, very big clash, and after that maybe it can bring a big tragedy to the world generally.
You know, I think we're seeing the same thing happen in the United States because of a number of issues, but especially this issue over sexuality, LGBTQ+, transgender. It is tearing the families apart and tearing the culture apart. And I think this is what President Putin said when he said, do not want to accept these Western satanic values.
Satanic, they are.
Because they destroy the family, they destroy the culture.
And mentality.
Yes, everything. So I want to ask you something. You talked a little bit with me before about the Heartland and Alfred Mackinder, who I'm very familiar with. And in the 19th century, the United States was looking to get a piece of the action in China, but there's the Pacific between the United States. And so the United States had to take Hawaii and illegally annex it so that it would have a foothold in the Pacific. And Mackinder said, whoever owns the Pacific owns the world economy, owns the world. He also said, in terms of this massive Eurasian landmass, which is Russia, that the heartland of the world, he who owns this land between Asia and Europe, will control the world. Tell me a little bit more about what you think about that. And I know you've been talking about Russia having all the resources, incredible potential for development, expansion, training and education in technology. How do you see this unfolding in the future now? Because this is where the world's resources are. And this is where the transportation corridor will be between Russia, China, and the rest of the world.
Well, it's geopolitics you're speaking about. Of course, the theory of Mackinder has the basis and the value for the science of geopolitics. I believe that it was correct word, heartland. And as I understand, the heart of the heartland is Russia. It is the biggest part of it. And the strength of the country cannot be evaluated in GDP only. GDP, it's some indexes invented in Western countries. They are not taking into consideration the natural resources, the military resources of the country, the national spirit of people who are living in the country. Russia is a kind of, even not country, it's a civilization, because it has a core as a Russian people, and around it, for centuries, it was collecting those peoples, those ethnic groups who wanted to be defended from different wars, crises in the world which took place, because they understood that together with strong core Russian people, they can survive together. And it was fully their own will, because they understood that Russian people, it historically is very tolerant. It understands and takes into consideration, supports all the languages of small peoples, all the education in their language, autonomous rights of these peoples, confessions of these peoples. That's why we have some republics which are, for example, of course, biggest part is Orthodox, but we have also Buddhist religion. We have many Muslim republics inside our country. And all these peoples just maintain their languages, their cultures, everything. If we take, for example, European countries, France, even the United States, there are no ethnic republics which have absolutely different culture, absolutely different religion, and we are civilization. That's why I say that Russia is a civilization itself. Around Russia were collected also Orthodox peoples, as Bulgarians, Serbs, Montenegros, and though they are nearly the same with Serbs, it's the same nation in fact. But other Orthodox peoples or Eastern Christianity. And in the works of Western philosophers, even Samuel Huntington, they are called Eastern Christian civilization. That's, we can say that wider Russian civilization, together with other peoples around us, with Georgians, with Armenians, we are Eastern Christian civilization. It differs from Western Christian civilization. We have differences. Even now, in what you said, in our values, we maintain our common values which we had with Western Christian civilization. But Western countries have lost it. Have lost, as you said, all these LGBT and I should say not normal in my comprehension, in my understanding things. It's not our values. Our values, yes, is family, freedom, of course, but not freedom in such a form of satanic things, which are not supported by any religion in the world. Religion, it's a kind of accumulated experience of the world, accumulated terms how the world can live. In different religions, not only in Christianity, in Muslim religion, in Buddhist religion, and so on. But they are not accepting this kind of understanding of freedom, that you can do everything. If you can do everything, you can kill anybody whom you don't like. And what we see in the United States more and more, it's terrible. I'm suffering for Americans too. Because it's not wrong, it's not good, it's not correct. That's why my understanding of Heartland is that it is a base, fundamental thing for the development of the world. And everybody must be in good, friendly relations, understand this mutual benefits which we can have from these good relations, from trade, mutually beneficial trade. Because, as I said, Russian natural resources were undervaluated and undervalued, I should say. And of course, it was not correct. But now the situation is turned over in the other side, that all these resources became overvaluated because West closed this door to the stock. And now all the resources became just kind of ruining the economy of European, first of all, countries, because the United States have a lot of their own natural resources. And they are trying to sell their natural resources in absolutely other prices.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it strange enough? Because we were bringing our gas, for example, $200 per 1,000 cubic meters. Americans are giving their fuel gas maybe 5 times, 4 times higher than we were giving. Are they allies between America and Europe? For me, it's strange, at least. They are not allies. They are trying, at least the United States, to take everything possible from Europe. And Europe is coming not compatible in world economy. And it will be a big problem for Europe.
You mentioned something, a couple of things that I think are very important. You've been talking about Russian identity, really. That Russians share a common religion. They are multi-ethnic, an incredible history, culture, and they are very united. They, as you said, stand strong together.
Because they understand that they will not survive in this world of wars and crisis.
So, thinking about that, and in terms of what you alluded to a little earlier about United States and European countries are not really allies. Europe has become colonized by the United States. And you also...
I avoided this word, but you are absolutely right.
I don't mind using
it.
Yes,
I support this position.
But now this is what I think is really important. You wrote something, and it was about national identity. And you can react to what I'm going to say, but I think that most of these countries in Europe who are part of the European Union are losing and maybe have lost their national identity and sovereignty, and they've handed it over to unelected officials who are really ruled by the United States of America. And because they're losing their national identity and their sovereignty, their history, their rich culture, this becomes a serious problem for Europe, which is, I think you're saying, it's not just economic, but it is, who are we? Would you agree with that?
Of course I do. I agree that now Europe is in a kind of neo-colonial dependence on the United States. And the United States are earning good money on all this situation. But in fact, losing the identity, it's a catastrophe, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because
who doesn't have a past will not have future. It's from ancient times, is well known. In our society, we of course call all this big world Russian civilization, Russian world. It doesn't mean that all these small peoples are Russians. They are from other ethnic groups, but the world, Russian in Russian language means who are with Rus, with Russian. They became Russian, belonging to this civilization where Rus is the center of magnetism, just bringing small peoples together around these big people of Slavic people of Rus. The root is Rus. That's why Russian is wide understanding of many peoples living together with us. As far as Europe is concerned, yes, they are losing their identity. And if we see the contradictions more and more between not only European countries, but even between peoples in one country where they exist, and they are existing, Scottish people with English people, or for example, Catalonians with Spanish people, Basques with Spanish, and even, look, Bayern, Bavaria, they call themselves Free Republic of Bayern. Their language differs very much with Swabia, for example, or with Germans living at the Baltic Sea. But they have lost their identity. In France, there are many peoples also, Norman people, Gascons. Now they are called everybody French. Mm-hmm. We don't say that Tatar, for example, or Bashkir is Russian. He is ethnic Tatar. But as generally we call it Russian world, because we are living in the world which has the abilities to defend itself and to give future. With our rich natural resources, we have future, we know it. But others, I mean Western world, is not giving us opportunity to live in peace and to become the country which comprehends this peaceful and good future, prosperity, freedom, and so on. That's why I said in the beginning that our feeling is that they are coming drunk nach Osten, you know this German phrase, to come and to take these resources. But they are not able to do it. So and it borns aggression in Western society.
We talked before we came on the camera about the danger of nuclear confrontation. Very dangerous now with this conflict that is raging in Ukraine, and everybody's worried about it escalating out of control. But you also wrote that the United States really may not want to engage in this head-to-head confrontation with Russia, as you mentioned before, a powerful nuclear country, and some people believe even superior to the United States nuclear capability, that the United States still is using that old doctrine of nuclear power, nuclear threat, and now they have a new strategy. And you talked about that strategy in terms of trying to strangle Russia. What did you mean by that?
Well, first of all, the nuclear threat exists, we feel it. And I think Samuel Huntington, in his work about clash of the civilizations, didn't make a real conclusion that clash between nuclear civilizations, which we are together with the Americans, is not possible. It means just final act of life in our planet. It's one thing. Another one is that we are afraid of some developments on the territory of Ukraine, where we are fighting with NATO and Americans. That's all these just speeches and shouts that Russia will use nuclear weapon at the territory of Ukraine. We are not crazy to kill our people. It's a part of our people in the heart. In our heart, it is our sisters, at least, brothers. But we are afraid of provocation, that they will give some kind of nuclear bomb, maybe small, and they will explode it and say that it's Russians. As they do all the time. They are lying and falsificating all the story of our military operation. We don't call it war in Ukraine. Military operation, and we are trying to save all the lives of civilians. That's what we are afraid. And after that, if this provocation will take place, it will mean that maybe nuclear war can begin. For us, it's unacceptable. We have even in our concept of security, military security, that we can use only strategic weapons in case of survival, of non-survival, of existential threat, existential danger for the country and for the people, or as a counter strike if we have the nuclear strike from the other side. This is written in our concept, and it's absolutely true. Well, we must stop in this confrontation. Americans should learn one maybe thing, I mean leadership, not people, to put themselves to the place of other and to see with the eyes. If, for example, the American troops, we know that they are in Syria without any invitation of the Syrian government, legal Syrian government, not some oppositional leaders, oppositional forces. In every country there can be oppositional forces and oppositional leaders. Legal government, I mean. If we fight at the territory of Syria, as they fight in the territory of Ukraine, against, we bring all the weapons and lead the operation, put Syrians and many other from Arab countries, not only Arab, from other countries, troops, and say, beat Americans there. Make all the strikes, ruin them. How would American leadership would feel? Mm-hmm. That's what we feel now. And that's why I say it's a big problem and very dangerous one.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious that this tactic of the United States now to prolong this conflict is to really squeeze Russia and Russia's resources, its economy, the will of the people, the will of the government, because it's public. The United States is publicly saying the goal is to get rid of Putin and to take down Russia, to break it up, balkanize it. I mean, they're not even secretive about it anymore. And so it's really obvious to those people, I think, that Russia, America, the United States is trying to strangle Russia in this conflict. And at the same time, this nuclear threat. They're dealing with fear. It's fear that they're gaslighting the world with. I, for the first time since I've been in Russia, feel a little bit of fear about what's happening next door in Ukraine. And I think it has created some kind of psychosis, mass fear in its populations, and I think it's very dangerous. But I want to get back to something else that you said. We were talking about orthodoxy, and part of the Western...
May I react to what you said before?
Yes, of course.
I would say again that they have very false understanding and evaluation of the situation. They bring us to consolidation, not to the splitting of peoples, because we understand that they will take all. And there will be not, many nations will not, ethnic groups and nations will not exist at all. And we understand that even they see the idea that Russians would not exist, to bring us to 700 years ago to different tribes, Slavic tribes. There are some ideas in theory, but they must understand that in periods of danger, our people and all ethnic groups, all ethnic republics are consolidating. And you can see even the example of Chechnya, which was, it wanted sometimes with the support of Western countries, kind of more freedom, more autonomy, or even separate state. Now they are together with Russia. Because Chechenian people who suffered from that crisis and that war now feels in danger from Western aggression against Russia. Because in Russia they will feel secure. Even Chechenian peoples, all the peoples of Russian Federation. In other way, the destruction will be so big that I think, in this case, nuclear war will be more and more possible. If they have an idea to cut us into parts, there will be some parts having these nuclear weapons which would like to answer to this politics of the Western countries.
Yeah, it's very frightening.
Sorry that I interrupted you.
No,
you wanted to ask me something about religion.
Yeah, you have written, and we've talked about that the West and the United States really in control of the West, using everything they can to divide people. And we talked about the sexual issues, we've talked about immigration, we've talked about ethnic issues in the United States, many, many things that are dividing the people in the culture, tearing it apart.
You mean in the United States?
Yeah, in the United States. And we were talking about how the United States is trying to use these same kind of things to divide other peoples, including Russia. But you talked about the strength of Russian Orthodoxy, or Orthodoxy in general. And it's well known by many people, at least here in this part of the world, that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is separated from the Russian Orthodox, the Patriarch Kirill. And they established their own patriarch in Ukraine. Tell me a little bit about how you see the West using religion and Christianity and this schism really in the church to divide Russia and Russian people over religion.
Of course, we always had in the past our common church, Orthodox Church with small Russia, as we say, yes, Malorossiya, and Belarus and in Baltic Orthodox population too, in Baltic region. Now, who was used in this operation? Because it's also a kind of special operation. As you know, the Constantinople Patriarch is very dependent on American Greeks and generally on the United States. He was moved forward to recognize some specially invented Ukrainian Orthodox Church, because there is no ethnic, language, or especially religious difference between us. And he moved forward this thing, this idea. He recognized it, and after that they split it more and more times. And I don't know in Ukraine how Orthodox churches do they have now, 3, 4, 10. And of course they are all enemies to each other. They have internal concurrence or fight for the bigger role. It's also understandable. That's why we see it as a part of all this politics of splitting our civilization into the parts. As I said previously, dangerous politics, because we are nuclear civilization, as the Americans are, Western countries generally.
You wrote something here that you said Russia will never allow the Russian world and the Greek world to be split. What does that mean?
Because we have got Orthodox religion from Greeks. We are connected very closely with Greek civilization, with Byzantium first of all. And we are called the Third Rome, maybe, as you know, because Second Rome was Constantinople, and Third Rome, when it was taken by Ottomans and Ottoman Empire appeared at this place, we took the scepter of orthodoxy in the world. That's why even all the Greeks understand the role of Russians and of Russia in saving of Orthodox religion, of Eastern Christianity. That's why these peoples never agree, and if you see public opinion polls in these countries, I mean Orthodox countries, they are all against rivalry and aggression against Russia. That's why I think that the deep roots will act more effectively than any politics of nowadays.
I want to ask you about a very important period in recent Russian history. It's a period that I've become very familiar with since I've been coming to Russia in 2016. And you used a word that I haven't heard used very much, probably at all before. It's that Russia, for a long period of time, had a delusion about the West and the West intentions. And in the 1990s, it was probably more visible than ever before, when after Perestroika, Gorbachev and then Yeltsin came in, the Russians seemed to be thinking that the United States wanted friendship.
We wanted to have friendship with Europe, with the United States, of course. It's reality.
So what did you mean that for a long period of time, and especially during this period, that Russian leadership anyway were delusional about America's intentions? What did you mean specifically about that?
Look, when we hear our leaders that we will not put our troops and NATO military bloc even a dime to Russia, we believe them. But when we are absolutely cheated and we understand that it is not a truth at all on the opposite, everything is on the opposite side, we are losing our illusions. That's it.
You know, I'm very well aware, as many people, but not many Americans, that since President Putin became the president of the Russian Federation in the year 2000, Russia has grown economically, politically in the world, and militarily. It is now another superpower, again. The fact that you just mentioned that the United States has been encroaching on Russia's borders over these last number of years to encircle Russia with bases and military weapons all around Russia, surrounding it. President Putin, at the Munich Security Council in 2007 conference, with John McCain sitting in the front row, he basically called out the United States of America. And he mentioned these things that America had been doing around the world, using force and coercion. And he said, "We will not submit," more or less, I paraphrase. And ever since that time, if there's two things that I think struck me that Putin has said, is that we will not go along with the Western American revisionism of history, changing history. And the second thing that he said is we will not be coerced into following the United States. This leads me to maybe the last thing that I want to talk about. Because in recent years, I think that President Putin has been the sole leader in the world pleading for peace, mutual collaboration, etc., but in advancing a new world order, a multipolar world. He talks about this consistently.
Yes.
I would like to hear you explain for me what you think President Putin means and how do you see it actually unfolding today? Because I see it unfolding geopolitically all over the planet, but tell me how you see it.
Look, for many years, our president is saying that NATO wouldn't do these dangerous things which they are doing now. Of course, there were 3 or 4 waves of expansion of NATO, and at that time, even at 2007, at 2007, we understood that everything, all our hopes were ruined for better life with the Western countries, friendship and cooperation were ruining in process. But now we see that they didn't hear anything, that they didn't accept any idea or approach of Russia to the question of the system, international system of security, that we must feel secure, all of us. Now multipolar world is forming. We see it. We have many signs of this because even African countries, Arab countries, they play their own role. Latin America, and if we show respect to individual, saying that maybe he is wrong, he is specific one, but we have respect to him. How cannot we have respect to the countries, to the states, to the peoples? If our people in Crimea, it's Russian people, saying that we, according to the constitution of Ukraine, make referendum and we are self-determinating, we are Russians, we don't agree with the coup d'etat in Kiev, which is purely nationalistic and counter-Russian, against Russians, and we have the right to withdraw from Ukraine, and we do it. It has no respect on behalf of the Western world. this is a real picture that only for one side are existing some principles, rules, and so on. We must follow these rules, and another side doesn't want, or it follows when it wants. On this basis, nothing can be built stable in the world. That's why we understand that multi-polar world needs more tolerance to each other, more respect to each other. In other way, it will be a world of conflicts, different conflicts between different poles of this new world. That's why we can make a conclusion that we must hear better. And if Putin was heard at 2007, I think this course could be changed. Nothing would be happen in these conditions.
We're talking about this multipolar world that I believe Russia, President Putin, is really the one that's driving this evolution into this new world order that means prosperity and security for everybody based on respect, strict observance of international law, the principles of the UN Charter. And in terms of Russia, China, and these other nations that are joining this movement, they are talking about alliances that are, they really go beyond alliances. They said, we hesitate.
We are not speaking about alliances, especially military alliances, not at all.
I was going to ask
We're
you that.
saying about the coalitions of those countries who understand that it is unavoidable development of our world, and we are coming to a new world order where we must respect each other, and it will be multipolar. That's all. And in fact, now we have this situation with neocolonialism in Europe especially. We must get rid of it. It's our position. Because Europe itself, it is a strong group of countries, which is also a special pole in contemporary world. Unfortunately, Americans are trying to ruin it. We are against it, because Europe is our neighbors, and we don't want to have poor neighbors, beaten and crushed. That's why we, of course, are saying to our European neighbors, sometimes we said European partners, friends, and so on. Now we don't use this word because the other part took this stand that now we are opponents at least. Okay, we can be opponents. For us, we have the Russian proverb that by force you cannot be loved. It's some kind of this, yes, proverb. So we don't need this love, but we need respect, quietness, understanding, and of course not aggressiveness, I should say. I never could imagine that Europe, in this freedom which it lives with different LGBT things, it can be so aggressive. Though I know that representatives of this community, LGBT, they are aggressive.
Yeah.
So maybe they have win already, won in Europe. They have victory already in Europe and gave this aggressiveness to the elites, to the leaders of European countries. Save God, as we say.
Yeah, you know, I'm very happy to hear you articulate what you did about the Russian belief in a future, a new world without conflict, without powerful military alliances to ensure their own personal security against the security of other peoples. I think American people need to hear that, and I appreciate hearing it from you, who is the highest ranking Russian official. Speak these truths about Russia and what Russia believes officially and spiritually. I think this is what I've been trying to communicate in my simple way to American and Western peoples, that you do not understand and never have understood Russia and Russian mentality. And I have just been trying to, through my simple work, expose more and more people to the truth and the reality of who Russia is today. Now, I would like to finish on something that is very important to you, and it's part of your primary responsibility in the Russian Federation. You are the permanent representative of Crimea to the Russian administration. I have come to love Crimea. I've come to understand its history and culture much, much better. I have come to understand that the return of Crimea to the Russian Federation, which you talked about previously, was completely about self-determination, which has been guaranteed by the United Nations, a referendum that was open and free and observed by electoral observers
Yes,
from all over the
many
world.
international observers.
I've come to understand that. And what I have learned since the first time I came here in 2016, and what I've seen in subsequent years, has been an incredible growth in every area here in Crimea. New roads, new highways, new power, electrical systems. The economy is booming. Everywhere you look, you can see cranes and construction going up. Even in Yalta, we see this all over. And I think this is thanks to the Russian Federation, who have supported the Crimean people and the Crimean state, the government, with many, many, I think, billions of rubles. Tell me what you think is so special about Crimea. I think I have a better idea now, but it isn't just the money that came from Moscow. It's something that has been here for centuries and has been allowed once again to flourish. Would you agree with that? And how would you describe it?
Of course, you said everything correct, absolutely. You know, the Crimea is developing rapidly. It was, in comparison with other Russian territories, when it returned back to the Russian Federation as underdeveloped region. Now it is quite well, but there is a deeper sense in Crimean things. In terms of our civilizational dialogue, I should say it is a center of our Russian passionality, of Russian passion, because here the Russian people got the religion, got the strengthening of the spirit, and that's why our president also said that Crimea is a sacral land, sacral place for all Russians. It's one thing. And I would conclude with the words you said about the Americans and their understanding what's going on in Russia and in their relations with Russia. That's what I just wanted to say, that they should understand better Russian world, Russian people, Russian will, Russian spirit, and of course our view to the future. And if they try to learn somehow better, more about Russia and Russian civilization, I hope, I believe they will understand us, because we are quite familiar. We looks like each other, our two peoples, and people must influence more to the leadership of the United States for better relations, not for aggression. If you had some internal problems, we would never be involved in them. Leave us alone for some time, and you will see that we will have much better relations that we do have now.
You know, I came here for the first time in 2016 as really a citizen diplomat, to come and learn and listen to Russian people and see a little bit of the Russian territory, including Crimea, Petersburg, Moscow. And I came on 2 subsequent trips with the Center for Citizen Initiative. It's an American organization. It was founded by and directed by a woman, Sharon Tennyson. It's been coming to Russia for 40 years and bringing Americans to Russia, large groups, 30, 40.
Yeah, I know.
As citizen diplomats, to come and to listen and learn. And I have many American friends. In fact, 25 of them joined our Friends of Crimea USA Club, having been here. And it was their experience that when they came here for 3 weeks, maybe a little more than 3 weeks, they interacted with Russians from all over Russia. And they came to Crimea. Not all, but many came to Crimea. And they saw with their own eyes and heard with their ears from Crimean people, Russian people, what you just said. We are more alike than we are different, Americans and Russians. And I think what you just said is of critical importance. And it's sad now that we're not able to travel and do this interaction with people-to-people diplomacy. That my hope is that this can once again happen, because I think we both agree that when we can meet each other as individual people without political concerns, without government interference, we find that
That's it.
peace and multipolarity is possible. So I'd like to ask you just one more question, and then we'll stop the interview. I would like to know, and I would like my viewers to know, what are your special responsibilities between the Russian administration and Crimea? You come here often. You're a top diplomat representing Crimea in the Russian Federation. What are your specific responsibilities?
I don't represent Crimea in Russian Federation because Crimea is a Russian Federation.
Okay.
I represent the Republic of Crimea to the governmental bodies and to the presidential bodies, have contacts with them, but I have a specific field of my obligations. It's foreign relations and foreign economic cooperation of the Republic of Crimea.
Now, when you say foreign, you mean with other countries?
With other
Who are
countries.
some of these countries? And you must be traveling and creating these bonds, correct? These bridges.
Of course, we don't have now the open road or green light in our cooperation with European countries, but we are not responsible for this. It's their own choice. But the world is big. Maybe somewhere in the Western countries they forget that 80% of the world are not there. It's outside of Europe or United States. So we have vast relations with many countries. Of course, first of all, the countries of ex-Soviet republics. Second, Middle East countries. Third, countries of Africa, Asia, and even Latin America. We as Crimea signed a lot of agreements, even with Latin American countries. Crimea is very interesting territory. It's, I should say, the sea gates in the southern part of Russia, in south of Russia, or southern gates to the world. It's a core point in the Black Sea and Mediterranean region. That's why many countries want to have very good and beneficial relations with the Crimean Republic. That's it. And of course I would like to thank you as a person who contributed to the organization of understanding of friendship. You became the friend of Crimea in your heart, and you support this idea that if we become friends with Crimea, with Russia, the peace will be much more stronger than it is now. That's why special regards to those people who are for friendship and not see the enemy in Russia and in Russian people. We are very friendly people, and that's what they should understand. We don't create dangers to anybody. We have everything in our country. We don't need anything more from even the smallest country in the world. But the only one thing we want is friendship and respect. That's all. Simple things.
Mr. Muratov, thank you so much.